Welcome to my new docu-series, Here Today, Gone Tomorrow. This is pretty much an inspired series that started out as a documentary of the importance of physical media and film preservation. Now, I set out to make this documentary about the importance of physical media and film preservation, which kind of go hand in hand, which some of you might think is kind of strange. I know over the past year or so, there has been a resurge in physical media. If you look on like TikTok and other social media platforms, the whole going to thrift stores and buying DVDs has been this new kind of phenomenon, if you will, or this new kind of trend. I mean, obviously, I've been collecting for over 20 years. Yeah, over 20 years now, since I was 8 years old, and I have probably over 11,000 films in my collection, or 11,000 titles, including some TV series in my collection. From various different genres, aspects, foreign films, boutique labels, so on and so forth. But really, I've set out to make this documentary about the importance of film preservation and physical media just because they do go hand in hand with, not every film that is... Because the importance of film preservation is preserving a film for future generations and for people to see. Now, that's where physical media kind of comes in, because you can, respirate and restore old films. Film wasn't even, well, I almost say the first 70, because film wasn't even considered an art form until the 70s, when Martin Scorsese really was one of the first filmmakers and most vocal to push for film as an art form. Before that, filmmakers in the early 1900s made films and would dispose of them the next week. A lot of Nickelodeons, your short films, you're starting out, that really got the moving motion picture started. They would shoot something that week, show it that Friday, Saturday, that weekend, Friday, Saturday, maybe Sunday, and then toss it away, throw it away. That next week, go shoot another 3 to 5 minutes of film, show it that week at the theater, and rinse, rather repeat. So a lot of films got lost in the shuffle and were never really cared for. So we've lost hundreds of films from the dawn of filmmaking. Now, I originally went to make a traditional style documentary, talking with various film professors, film historians, archivists, people who deal with celluloid reconstruction and preserving film. And not shockingly, I can say that I reached out to dozens and dozens of people. I reached out to various companies like Vinegar Syndrome, Criterion, Lobster Films, who did a restoration of Trip to the Moon from 1902, and a couple other boutique labels to try to do interviews or talk with somebody from there, because let them know I was making a documentary, and to kind of give an insight on the importance of film preservation and kind of process of that, to kind of highlight and kind of shine light on the importance and how much time, effort really goes into it, and just to kind of give us some more insight on that subject matter. And of course, I also reached out to the Museum of Modern Art, which has countless films in their collection and various things of that nature. But of course, I can't say I'm surprised nobody got back to me. So I reached out to film professors across various universities across the U.S., all in which were film professors with different aspects of film. Some had a background in filmmaking, some had background in film preservation, some had backgrounds in film history, a couple of film historians, which again I want to interview them to talk about what do you think is some important films that barely made the cusp and that are in print today. Where some films that are technically not out of print or out of existence, but aren't something that is readily available, and to kind of piggyback that onto the importance of film preservation and physical media. And this opening episode of the film series is pretty much to kind of talk about the importance of film preservation and how physical media goes hand in hand. And as the series goes on, I want to look into different organizations that are major players in film preservation and physical media. Now, where physical media comes in is a important role in film preservation is you can preserve as many films as you want. You can have every film from the early 1900s, and you could have them mint condition on 35 millimeter print or 16 millimeter print, and have these films, transferred and have these immaculate celluloid copies. But if it's locked in a vault, yes, they're still in existence, but they're not really. I would argue it's important because they are still in existence. There is still an existing copy, but if it's locked in a vault for nobody to see, does it really even? Technically, yes, it exists. I'm not going to say that whole theory of if a tree falls in the woods and nobody's around to hear it, doesn't make a sound type thing. That's kind of the same philosophy. Is that if a film is preserved but locked away for nobody to see, is it the same as not existing at all? Which is no, it still exists. It's still there and being preserved, but it's not doing any good if nobody can see it. And that's where physical media comes into play. Now, again, with streaming, everybody's like, oh, you can stream this, you can stream that. Streaming is a very inconsistent and wobbly platform at the moment, even so now more than ever. When streaming content took over, it was a very good place to find these older, obscure films. When Netflix first came out, there were films like A Trip to the Moon on there. Like A Trip to the Moon was on Netflix, believe it or not, for the first couple of years of Netflix. And you had all these older films that, you wouldn't think to be on a streaming service. They weren't films that were of high demand of your casual movie watcher. However, in the beginning, Netflix needed to fill this void, and they needed to make a statement that they had over X amount of thousands. They had like 8,000 titles in their queue at any time that you could watch. Now, out of those 8,000 titles, you had a lot of titles that were films that most people or most casual movie watchers aren't going to go and watch, but it still beefs up that number and makes it appear that they have more than what they do. But again, for your cinephiles, it gave you an opportunity to see these films that you wouldn't be able to see anywhere else. Like A Trip to the Moon, I know was out of print for the longest time. I actually have a copy of it on Blu-ray that I got from Lobster Films, and it was a very limited release. I want to say that Blu-ray cost like $45 or something like that when I bought it, and I pre-ordered it when I heard it came out because that was a film that I truly loved, and it was one that it was one of the first films in film school that in my freshman year of film class, that I really kind of was exposed to and had this kind of opened this door into the wonders of early cinema. So that kind of was always a sentimental film to me. So again, that was a film that you go online now and try to buy it. There's not many copies around. It's no longer on Netflix. It's on Netflix for a very short period of time, but it's not there anymore. And again, having physical media, it's like, yes, there's actually a documentary on there too I watched about the preserving that film and how the length it took them years to preserve that, to restore that film. It took them years to do so. There's actually a really interesting story behind it. That's for your video. But the importance of physical media is that without that physical copy in my collection, the probability of being able to stream that somewhere is highly unlikely. I haven't checked for making this video, but I know for years you couldn't stream it anywhere. You couldn't find it anywhere. You could potentially find a DVD copy that was released from a different label years prior, but that was like you could search eBay and maybe find a copy, but it was very high price, and the quality of the disc, again, used DVD on eBay, it's hit or miss. And the importance of physical media is that you can preserve these films, release them on physical media, and they're available for audiences to see. Now, throughout this docuseries, I kind of want to highlight various different companies and film nonprofits that are working hard on preserving film, and kind of take a look at films that wouldn't exist today if it weren't for their efforts, along with film companies that are profitable companies that are for-profit companies that are restoring and releasing films that we wouldn't have otherwise. Because yes, there is a very niche market for obscure films, but I feel like that market is growing. And again, with streaming, nothing on streaming is permanent. Streaming, your favorite movie or show come off in a year or two. They're constantly switching services. Even Netflix takes off their original content from their catalog, because the thing with streaming is, I think a lot of people don't think about, is that they have to pay. Even if Netflix produces a show, they have to pay everybody involved for every year it's on their streaming service. Now, at first streaming was amazing at first for the first couple of years because there wasn't a huge influx of content that they had to pay out for. Now, everything that Netflix got from the studios, they leased from the studios. They only had to pay the studios a small percentage fee for having it on their service, and the studios then had to take that money and redistribute it to the creators involved for their contract pay. Drawing a blank on the word, but like prime example, Friends, Jennifer Aniston, Matt LeBlanc, David Schwimmer, all of them get $20 million a year in royalties. That's royalties. $20 million a year in royalties from the show Friends that went off the air, I don't know, like 20 years ago. The show hadn't been on there in 20 years, and they're still making $20 million a year in royalties from that show. Now, again, not every movie and show has that high of extent of royalties, but like when Netflix had Friends on their platform, it was costing them over $100 million a year just for that one show to be on there. Now, you could buy the box set on Blu-ray at one point for like $60, which, again, is considered pricey, but once you own that, there is no taking it back. The royalties are paid to the actors, creators, and so forth, and the studio no longer has to continue to pay each month for you to own that box set. Once that's that one-time sale, they get their royalties, you get to keep the show, and the studio does not continue to lose money on that show. And that's kind of how the whole streaming thing's working now. Kind of a sidebar is that streaming services are even talking about putting less and less into original content movies. Paramount, head of Paramount just said they're no longer making movies for streaming. All of their films are focusing on theatrical runs. Streaming is going to be all TV shows, and it's kind of going to take over for cable, which was the original intent before it kind of got all wobbly. But the whole point of that is physical media is going to help preserve films to give us the opportunity to continue to see films that otherwise would not be readily available. Now, as we go through this series, there are films from the Museum of Modern Art, the Film Foundation, like Lobster Films. Film Foundation and Museum of Modern Art are two of the ones I definitely want to point on throughout the series, that they are solely responsible for the restoration and existence of current films that are readily available for people to see. Criterion Collection is one that has films from the Film Foundation, Museum of Modern Arts, and I believe even the UCLA even has films that they restored, they had in their archive that were used for the restoration and reprinting of films in the Criterion Collection, which are now readily available for people to see. So that's pretty much what the series is going to be. It's kind of a long-winded video of that. That it's going to be an ongoing series. We're going to kind of talk about and pick different businesses or nonprofits that play a huge role in film preservation and film restoration, and highlight, what they do, how they do it, or what we can find out online. Again, nobody's gotten back to me doing interviews or having anybody really talk to enhance that experience, to give us a little more insight, but to kind of point out, what these companies and nonprofits are doing and kind of highlight the importance of their work and the importance of physical media and film preservation. So, as always, thanks for watching. We will upload new videos daily on different film content. This will be a once-a-week film series that will come out for the foreseeable future, and then once we get through the initial season 1 of talking about the different companies, I do plan on doing for season 2, highlighting different films that were re-released and restored, and kind of going and talking a little bit more in detail about that process, because there are quite a few films I have in mind already that I've seen some documentaries and special insights on, or special features that come with the thing, where they'll do like documentaries, behind the scenes interviews that kind of go deep into the process, some in which I've actually talked to people from the companies about the process. Now, when I say I talk to people from the companies, no, the people didn't get back to my emails about, letting, to come on and talk about the process. This is more of me just going to different film conventions and talking to the people who run the stands, who actually work for the companies, that have a hand in, the day-to-day process, and they just kind of go on these different conventions to help promote the product. So that being said, it brings us to the end of this episode. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.